All right, welcome everyone. Thanks for joining our webinar. I'll start by introducing myself. I'm Chantal, a product manager here at Density, and my background is in architecture, so I hope you're all ready to nerd out about space and data. If you're not familiar with Density and you're just joining, we're an analytics platform that helps you measure how humans use space without invading privacy, and some of our clients and companies that use Density use it to make informed decisions about their workspaces in particular. Today we have joining some very exciting guests, Rob Blair, who is the Global Workplace Manager at TravelPerk, and Darren Graver, our very own research lead here at Density. I'm going to pass the mic briefly to let them introduce themselves, and then we'll jump right in. Rob, do you want to get us started?
Sure. Thank you for having me, everyone. Great to be here. So my name's Rob. I am the Global Workplace Manager at TravelPerk, which is a corporate travel management platform. I have been here about 4 months now, so still quite new to this role, but have been in workplace in various varieties for probably 6 or 7 years, and then a background further back from that in kind of hospitality and the hotel industry. So, but yeah, it's super excited to be here, excited to hopefully share some insights for you all. And yeah, I'll happily pass on the mic.
Awesome. Great to meet everyone. Great to have you here as well, Rob. I'm Darren. I'm in the research team here at Density as part of the product team. Prior to joining Density, I was workplace lead at Wise, or TransferWise as it was formerly known. So I was looking after design, construction, real estate, operations. So yeah, here to share some more knowledge and experiences from that, and also how we think about the product here at Density too.
Awesome. Really excited to dive deep into measuring what matters most about your workspace. Before we do, Rob, could you give the audience a rough idea of the size of TravelPerk, how many offices you guys have, how many employees?
Sure. So TravelPerk was founded in 2015. We are about 750-ish people globally right now. Most of that is weighted towards Barcelona, where we are HQ'd out of, which I am here today. But we have 6 other hubs outside of Barcelona. So most of those are small flex spaces, and that would be in the UK, in Germany, and then we have 3 in the US right now. So yeah, 7 in all.
Awesome. And it sounds like we've got a pretty global presence here today on the webinar with you in Barcelona, Darren joining us from the UK, and I'm based in New York City. So for all of you guys listening, we're reporting from multiple time zones here. Couple of housekeeping items before we jump in. If anyone has any questions or comments, please feel free to throw them in the Zoom Q&A or chat, and we'll try to bring them up during the conversation. And if not, we will have some time for questions at the end. So let's dive right in. So when we talk about measuring what matters in the workplace, I think a lot of us tend to think of physical presence right off the bat. Darren, how significant do you think utilization is as a sign of office success today?
Yeah, first of all, I think it's super cool that we're doing this fully distributed today.
Yeah.
It's kind of pretty awesome. But yeah, in terms of utilization, so I think just like for setting context first, I think that would be really helpful. So at Density, the way we calculate utilization in our product is essentially by counting the total people we have in the space, what we at Density call occupancy, and then we divide that by the building capacity. So that building capacity could be something you've done from a design perspective as a user, or it could be something that's set by fire code, or in Europe by regulations, and regulations tend to be quite strict. But I think what's really important is like bringing some perspective to this in terms of what happened PC or post-COVID.
Are we there yet?
Well, and also before, like that's what I was really going to say. Like, I think we should go to like BC before COVID and just sense check like what was going on then. And like pre-COVID utilization was like around 65%. And it's very easy to forget that. There was things like PTO or annual leave for our friends that are in Europe. There was sick days, and there was business travel. So there really wasn't very often a time when the office was full and there was loads and loads of people in there. And it was at like 90% utilization. And actually, if you're hitting kind of 90% utilization, there's probably a problem that's underlying that needs to be addressed. It's likely you potentially need more space. So I think it's really important that as we begin to think about metrics and measuring success, that we level set on the basis that we don't sort of think that there was this like magic golden answer pre-COVID, because there was challenges with utilization then, and it stems way back, right?
Yeah, for sure. Rob, I'm curious, I've heard you talk about how community is key at TravelPerk, and when we think about measuring what matters, how much of a priority is physical presence in your current workspace strategy?
Well, I mean, I think it's a significant sign. I don't think it's the only thing we should be using. I mean, you can take a good example of, you might have in your kind of return to office or hybrid working plan that most companies have been trying to iterate on since in the current sort of weeks and months. But you might have plans where people are coming in on certain days and not others, and your office might purely be there just for collaboration or social, kind of social elements. So it could be a more transient kind of hub. So utilization doesn't always tell all, I suppose, is the key point to take away from that. I mean, from our side at TravelPerk, sort of philosophically, fundamentally, we believe that we produce our best work in real life. I mean, our company mission is to connect people in real life in an enjoyable and sustainable way. So, I mean, it's in our personal beliefs that we produce our best work in real life. So, does that mean that we're not kind of leveraging flexibility that everyone expects? Absolutely not. We absolutely are embracing that. But and as a workplace team, and sitting as part of our community, our wider kind of community team, we believe that our responsibility is to pull people in, not pull people to the office, not push them. So we are going through a kind of designing process of our first proper HQ here in Barcelona, and from the get-go, our CEO was very much set us the kind of challenge of removing all the obstacles that would make people choose to work from home than in the office. So we'll never win on location. You can roll out of your bed and roll to your desk. We'll never win on that front versus work from home or remote working. But the setup in the office should be every bit better than at home, and that's our kind of challenge, I suppose, is to flip the mindset so that we pull people in rather than kind of have to put in strict mandates about making people come in.
Absolutely. I mean, go ahead.
Can you wear sweatpants in the office, Rob? That's the big question.
I think any self-respective tech company would very much allow sweatpants in the office. There's a zero judgment free zone.
Nice. So you are really trying to pull.
100%.
It sounds like you've got the very challenging but also pretty cool job of designing a new space amidst this kind of like new reality that we're living in. How do you approach a new office design in these times? Like, how are you guys collecting data on and learning from your workforce to figure out how to design?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's very fair to say it's a very complex kind of puzzle or matrix of problems that we need to figure out. So we've certainly had a lot of help along the way, but we've essentially kicked off our process with understanding what our leadership kind of philosophically want the HQ to be. That's the very starting place, so we can understand how they envisage it, and then secondly, to follow that up, we kind of build a really detailed understanding of our business. We started with focus groups and interviews with our key stakeholders to understand how all the teams are actually interacting with each other, and what do we need to consider for them to produce their best work. And when we physically looked at that on a map, man, it was just so many cross lines, and it was a complete kind of real messy puzzle for us to figure out. So
people are weird.
yeah, right. And that's the beauty of humans, I suppose. And we are we surveyed our population in terms of what they would expect and want from a new HQ. So we kind of had a full spectrum of how we work, what are all the asks, and then picked it up from there. And then from we ended up going down this route of understanding the different personas that we have in our business. And we did that on a kind of axis scale of people who want to do collaborative work to individual work, and then that's on kind of one axis. On the other axis was a kind of quiet versus social or loud kind of work. And then we started to plot the different dots on the scale of where the different profiles that we had in our business. And that was very complicated, because at the same time, I could be doing deep focus work in the morning, but then social work in the afternoon, and then that poses another problem as to and we ended up deriving close to 30 of these kind of personas throughout our business. And again, breaking that down, we had to kind of surmise the most frequently used ones, because I don't think there was any way we'd be able to accommodate 30 different profiles of needs in one space. So so surmising that as best as we could, we ended up narrowing that down to about 7 main personas. And then from that, each persona we broke down into the type of spaces and environments they need to produce their work and to collaborate or not so with their team members, and then somehow cram all that into a floor plan blueprint, and then basically wrap that up with a bow and hand it to our construction team as to how that works. And so it's a very complex piece, and we've had a lot of support from some amazing strategists to get to that stage. But we were lucky that I feel very lucky to have been part of the process, because we invested in it from the top down. Like, everyone's been involved in this process, and I think that's the only way you get a true reflection of what your business really is about and what your business needs in order to produce its best.
Yeah, for sure. And we're hearing more and more of our customers going down that sort of persona-based route to help inform design and help inform their strategy. I'm curious, with the focus groups, what was the thing that came out of that surprised you the most, that you didn't expect?
Well, I've been working in tech for about 4 years, and I thought I knew, I think, most of what I thought I knew most ways that teams were interacting with each other. And it turns out, I mean, again, I've only been here about 4 months, but so every company has its own nuances. But I was not expecting the kind of complex web of who worked with who and at what stage in perhaps the customer journey teams interact with each other. And it was very, very complex, far more so than I expected. So when we saw that, it certainly took me aback for sure. And again, filtering down to the personas, when you think about all the different type of work that we do on a single day, or even a half a day, compared to what we think maybe a traditional engineer might work, super focused work for most of the time, but actually we found out that some of our engineers are doing more collaborative than individual focused work. So it was a lot of that. There was so many insights that we gathered from that was way not in line with what I expected.
Well, on the plus side, it sounds like silos is not one of your issues.
For sure.
I'm curious with, you mentioned, 30 different personas. How are you thinking about inclusivity as you, as part of workplace success and as you design this new space?
Well, I think it's the one thing that I think it's something that I think everyone can be doing better. Let's put it that way. I think we can all do our best to drive equal representation with as much things as we can touch, and we do that by listening to our people, giving everyone a seat at the table, and giving a chance to express their views with an open mindset. So I don't think there's any silver bullet to driving inclusivity in the workplace. I think we need to understand that everyone has different needs. You even go as granular as to how are we setting up our meeting rooms to accommodate people who maybe can't be in the office, maybe not just because they're remote, but maybe there's a physical reason why they can't be there, or more, and how are we doing our best to kind of level set an experience for them too. I think there's been loads of studies. I think it was McKinsey off the top of my head that did like a really prominent one that just that shows and proves that diverse teams are way more productive. So it's a no-brainer to do what we can to kind of drive that level of inclusivity for sure. I'm sure that there's employee engagement surveys and things that we can physically do to start measuring how successful we think we are doing. But yeah, it's fundamental to be able to deliver a workplace experience for everyone, for sure.
I think we're seeing more and more companies being cognizant of, or more conscious, should I say, of neurodiversity. And I think that's something that's like super important, is like, how do we design different types of spaces that cater for different individuals, essentially. For example, we've seen a lot more of the addition of quiet focus rooms or quiet libraries now for employees who are perhaps more naturally introverted, for example. And coming back to your earlier question, Chantal, like how can we measure the success of these things? I think dwell time is a really good metric to measure quiet or focus space, if you like. So for those who may be less familiar with dwell time is essentially the amount of time a space is occupied during each use. And so if a space is not well designed for focus work, for example, the task chair you're sitting is uncomfortable, or you've not got a power socket close by to work, plug your laptop in or plug a monitor in to charge devices, it's unlikely the employee is going to be able to work in that space for a long period of time. So as we analyze the data coming from our sensors, we're likely to kind of see these very short dwell periods in a space that's likely designed for focus work, which signals that the space is not performing as it was intended, so as it was designed, and therefore you can kind of determine that essentially it's unsuccessful. So yeah, that's one of the ways we're seeing some of our customers today using some of the metrics we're able to surface from our open area sensors to help them understand whether they're kind of hitting or missing the mark when it comes to serving the needs of their employees and creating those inclusive environments.
Absolutely. Rob, when, I heard you say that you guys are doing focus groups and surveys to be able to kind of set the groundwork for this design. Do you guys have any kind of plan on like how you're going to be able to evaluate the success of this HQ project? Are you guys, do you have anything in place to be able to kind of like measure whether employees are attending or how they feel about the space?
Yeah, I mean, certainly we'll gather data as best we can in terms of utilization, and there's a lot of tools out there for us to help do that. I think we will certainly be looking to leverage as much technology as we can, and it's certainly one of those things we all, being in tech, it's an easy win for us, but we have to embrace that as best we can, and yeah, I think that we also understand that in many ways, no one has the silver bullet for what the return to office and hybrid working means for their business. We have to understand that the office itself will be a living, breathing artifact of what is our business, and we need to adapt to that as it changes, and it'll be a constant evolution. So yeah, we'll 100% we'll be using what we can to understand how it's using it, how people are using it, for it to be constantly optimized. And we'll certainly we do have a real strong culture within TravelPerk of talking to our people and listening to our people, and so we'll continue to do that, and also look where we can to leverage data, because data and verbatim is absolutely everything when it comes to these type of things, not just the how, but the why, I suppose. So we'll be looking to do that however we can.
It's really interesting in some ways. This is very similar to product design, right? You're dealing with a list of personas and you have a hypothesis about how they will use your workplace product, and then you'll be evaluating it. And a lot of the customers that I've spoken to recently have kind of one of two different types of workplace hypotheses. They're either all about the individual and meeting those needs, however they work, wherever they want to go. And on the other end of the spectrum, it's very team centric. So it's all about how teams work together and cross-functionally. Where does TravelPerk fall on that spectrum?
That's a great question, and I think it's we need to be able to offer a little bit of everything to everyone to be able to for them to be able to provide the spaces for them to come to the office. I think that we do have a tendency in times gone by to listen to whoever shouts the loudest when about what it is the office is to them, and rely upon kind of arbitrary messages or feedback from leadership who maybe are less so in touch on what the space needs to be. So from our side of things, we've clearly gone through quite an extensive process of understanding the needs of our people, and so we'll look to deliver on that as best we can. And that is it's been a very, very complex web, but for me variety and choice is the key. We need, there's no point, everyone, as I said, everyone is doing different types of work from one minute to the next, and we need to be able to cater to that type of working. We're not going to please everyone all the time, and I think if we had an office of 200 meeting rooms, we'd probably not have enough meeting rooms to accommodate everyone that needed one at the moment they need it. But it's about keeping it a dynamic space and keeping it tied to what's important to us and our culture and our ways of working.
Absolutely. Darren, I'm curious, you talk to a lot of our different customers and hear about their workplace approaches. What are you hearing in the space about how they measure what matters?
Yeah, it's I think, as I said earlier, I think dwell times are really growing metric that a lot of people are looking at. I think to Rob's point a minute ago, meeting rooms tends to be the one that comes up a lot. Meeting rooms and desks tend to be the two hot topics. Everyone's very precious about their desks, and certainly with hybrid working, we're seeing a lot more organizations moving to unassigned seating versus having individual assigned seats. So certainly utilization at a neighborhood level is something that they're very interested in understanding, how teams are using the desks that they're given, and whether they can move to more sort of aggressive desk sharing ratios, or just accommodate more people within the same amount of space. So that's certainly a common theme. I think utilization of meeting rooms is the other big one we're seeing a lot of interest in right now. Kind of to your point, Rob, a second ago, there never feels to be like enough meeting rooms. And certainly when we're speaking to customers and looking at data, what we see a lot of is that you get sort of 2 people go and take a 4-person meeting room, and then those people that wanted a 4-person meeting room go take an 8-person one, and you kind of got this like domino effect of 50% utilization across the board, where these meeting rooms aren't really being fully utilized, and sort of creates this sort of scarcity of supply that's all stems from there not being enough to support those small kind of one-to-one type meetings, or people on phone conversations as well, being the other one. And things like phone booths are coming out now to help address that, and we're seeing a lot more customers invest in those type of modular solutions. So yeah, I would say utilization is a big one, both for desks and meeting rooms. Certainly tends to be a hot topic. As I say, as more and more teams more and more customers rather are designing for these different types of individuals, and as you said, taking that more product-based approach, Chantal, the persona driven type approach. Certainly things like dwell time is becoming a greater focus, because they're wanting to know, is that space that I'm designing for people who like to focus actually doing what it should.
Yeah, and we've been lucky in our position here at TravelPerk, where whilst we're kind of building this new HQ and iterating on it constantly, we've been able to experiment basically with our current office space a little bit, where we've been able to, one of the asks that we had was to produce these kind of team rooms where people, because we have obviously such a global presence, where people could come and have 10, 12, 14 people working in a space for an entire day, and not kind of and they, it's a different kind of setup to a meeting room. Everyone's got individual screens, and so we've been able to trial some of these elements before we get to actually physically build something in our new HQ. So obviously we're very fortunate to be in the position to do that, but it gives us a chance to really trial and tinker with these things. And everything, anyone who's able to keep their office space agile and make these series of kind of micro experiments to keep it to keep it fresh and is super valuable.
Yeah, and I think I generally think like iteration and testing is the best way forward right now, is to create that hypothesis, test it, evaluate it with data, and then fail fast essentially if it doesn't work. I think that's a really great way to look at it. And having that chance, as almost like a living lab that you've got right now to kind of validate some of those hypotheses and then kind of take them with you into your strategy for your HQ if it works or doesn't is pretty awesome. How are you thinking about seating there, Rob? Are you going with assigned seating, or are you moving to sharing ratio?
We're most likely going to be going down a neighborhoods route, which again is something that we were able to trial here and I had huge success with actually. And not just having a neighbor, one of our key community team goals is to build with our people, not for them. So we end up, what can we do with that in workplace? How can we, it's all good just kind of okay, here's the sales neighborhood, here's your go and do your work, but actually involving them in the process and having them add elements of their own kind of customization. That again, there's been plenty of evidence out there that people feel more engaged and involved in spaces when they have their own investment in it. So we're going through that process, and for sure neighborhoods will be a big part of that. We've done our very best to try and gauge what ratio of actual assigned desks do we need versus hot desks, and again came up with some really interesting insights. Like I think it's pretty common across most tech businesses that I've been involved in that Monday is like quite a sales heavy day where people are coming in and doing their forecasting for the week. And so how does that impact the space that the sales team need? Well, actually, maybe it means that they don't need so many desks on, for their team, because actually when they're in the office, they're probably going to be meeting and, meeting with each other and meeting with customers. So maybe they don't need such a high person to desk ratio than perhaps, I don't know, our builders, like our engineers and our product team who are maybe a bit more desk bound. So it's we've been able to go through a real good understanding and iteration processes through this whole kind of journey.
That's super cool. And when you say about the community and building with it, what are some of like the success metrics that your leadership team are sort of asking you for or asking you to measure? Like, what are the things they're interested in from a data standpoint?
Sure. Well, employee engagement for sure, and we have again a constantly evolving process of how we measure that. But yeah, we do like to have involvement as much as we can, and we talk about organic content a lot here in our team, and that's our community, our employees, our members, whatever you want to call them, voluntarily coming up with ideas to not just about the space, but about how we can take TravelPerk to new places, and whether that's different sub-community groups or whether it's I don't know, suggestions on the office space. Like we have like our hub ambassadors, which are like, in each of our offices. So, they're kind of like almost like a representation of the various sub communities. So we're not dictating culture to the US that is not relevant to what they need. And we have those based in all of our hubs. So, we do our very best to try and, encourage them and empower them to live our kind of TravelPerk values. Not feel like it's the community team's responsibility to do that. So there's a lot of empowering, a lot of messaging to them to kind of do what they can to help it, because it's community is everyone's responsibility. Culture is everyone's responsibility. So we do what we can to try and live and preach that, I suppose.
Yeah, super interesting to hear you say community and using the word community a lot. I was reading an article just yesterday and they were saying, like, you know, what was the secret source of WeWork? And it wasn't real estate, it was that creation of community. And I think we're seeing more and more companies moving to that, shifting to that mindset of actually, you know, it's less about the physical space. It's, you know, it's important, but actually community is at the center of all of that. So super interesting to hear that TravelPerk are really kind of leading the way in that and being very thoughtful about that.
100%. Yeah, our team has scaled, you know, a lot in the last 2 years. You know, even in the last 6 months, we've gone from sort of 4 to almost to 10 people now, and you know, I mean, we have different elements of our business, from workplace to get-togethers, we call them, more like the event side, and a community experience side as well. So you know, we have different elements that kind of encompass community, but you know, we put a huge amount of effort and consideration into it, because let's be honest, like we perceive we're one of the key reasons how we keep the best talent here, is because, you know, as most tech companies will benchmark salaries and will benchmark all of the things that the other, you know, competitive tech companies have, but you know, we feel that we are here to keep people here once they are here. You know, that's a certain element of what we feel responsible for.
Yeah. When you I mean, that sounds really awesome, the way that in a sense is sort of like nurturing and building this ecosystem and the sense of belonging in your workplace, which is of course like physical and digital. How, when you survey your community and you ask for feedback, how do you avoid sort of this survey fatigue and avoid putting too much pressure on your community to respond?
I think it's a great question, because it's very easy just to sort of knock out a quick survey and send it to everyone and be like, hey, how are we doing? What would you rate us out of 10, or you know, whatever. And I think that I think frankly, there's no better way of communicating at scale and gaining feedback than a survey. Having said that, you know, the survey fatigue is very real after the last few years, or whether it's you know, work from home surveys, or how many days are you coming to the office, or you know, equipment needs, all of this kind of stuff. We've all kind of been through it. So I don't think there's, again, I'm not sure there's a silver bullet to that, but I suppose I think the key is to be intentional with everything that you're trying to ask, and work with your people to let them know almost the why, you know, telling them the why we're doing this because, and planning them strategically at certain points, and keeping people informed that that's when they're going to happen. Because, you know, if we're just sort of sending surveys out once a week to everyone, then it will, however often, then it kind of loses its you know, you lose the appeal of it. So I think that there's you know, there's clearly softwares of a plethora of different softwares we can use to measure certain spaces and utilization and things like that. But in terms of sentiment, there's not not that I'm aware of anyway, that I can think off the top of my head at least, like a better way than asking through surveys. But I think it's just strategically planning them, putting real intentional thought into how and when you send them, would be my thoughts on that, I suppose.
Some people think I'm crazy when I say this, but I actually really like those smiley face buttons you get in like restrooms and airports. And there's a method in my madness here. And I see you're both laughing at me now when I say it, but like, I think for me, the key to delivering a great workplace experience is removing as much friction as possible. So whether that's like right-sizing meeting rooms, as we were talking about earlier, or just removing like the forms and processes you need to like do to use a space or be involved in a space or give feedback. And it's the same in everyday life. Like if you think about an experience, even in e-commerce, for example, if like a checkout requires you to like add credit card details, you can't use Apple Pay or Android Pay and just do it in 30 seconds. It's kind of frustrating. And I think it's the same with workplace. Like if you're having to fill out these endless surveys, you sort of, as you said, Rob, you get this like fatigue almost. And actually what you end up doing is just getting how that person feels in that moment or point in time, you know, and likely frustrated because this is the 13th survey they filled out in their, you know, 1 year tenure at X company, because as you said, they've been through these various different surveys about what they need for working from home and what they need when they're coming into the office. So something where you like walk into the physical space and you can just hit a button, like feels like super easy to me and much more natural. And certainly some NPS surveys are going that way now, where there's just like smiley faces. I've seen a few come through via email. And then I think also like passive solutions like sensors is another big one, because again, like that data is being captured anonymously. There's no, there's no need for the individual to do anything apart from just enter the space and use the space as they normally would. And you can then get feedback on whether they like particular rooms or whether they like particular technology in that specific meeting room, for example. So I think like, yeah, there's ways and means to do it beyond surveys, in my opinion, and to measure kind of user experience and user feedback and sentiment.
Because that real-time data approach will take into account, like, everyone has habits, and some of them are subconscious, right? That you go, I don't know, past the kitchen on your way through because that's just the way what you always do, and you grab your water refill or whatever it is. So having the live feed is just like so powerful to measure those type of things, and you can see the trends and how the space is being used and stuff like that. So yeah, it's definitely super helpful, and yeah, requires next to no input from the community, at least.
Yeah, exactly. It should be almost as invisible, right? It's just that seamless transition that goes on behind the scenes.
Speaking of, seamless transitions, and a lot of what this is starting to get at is kind of like the everyday experience in the office, or as a member of a community who works in a hybrid environment. Curious, you mentioned the office for TravelPerk is very much a reflection of your business and who you guys are as a company and as a team. Are there any like specific design elements that are very unique to the needs of TravelPerk? You mentioned team homes. What does a day in the life of a TravelPerk employee look like?
Sure. Well, the thing that springs to mind the most for me is we talk about cultural artifacts at Sprinkler, and so an artifact is something that to us is something that's indicative of our business. It's like something that it's ingrained in our culture, and so it can be small things from almost like, so our meeting rooms are all kind of named after basically like internal jokes from the surface, some from like 5 years ago, some from like most recently. So we have these cultural artifacts like throughout our office space. Some of them might be physical things, like maybe furniture that we really like that we kept from previous offices, or we have like even some, like I'm just looking now in our kitchen, there's like some small like sort of comical signs that we've made that relate to stuff that happens within our business. That it's all stuff that that means something that has a deeper meaning than just I don't know, a regular chair or a regular piece of signage, or a meeting room named after a local a local like site, or a significant piece of something that's related to the city. Like it's all stuff. It's everything here has we've thought about. We have our own branded mugs with silly messaging on that, but it's all messaging that relates to our business. So it's we have these artifacts running throughout, yeah, that it's all part of the DNA of what makes us who we are. And we can do all that in a digital sense by having like the company backgrounds and all this kind of stuff, but that's why I think we value in real life connection, because our offices are our kind of culture hubs. It's where we come to do our best work. And I think it's also relevant, when we talk about company culture. I read a really interesting article the other day that was saying your company culture is only as good as like the last 50 days. Like there's no point in putting your values down on paper 3 years ago if you're not still living and actively breathing that every day. And I think that all these small kind of micro artifacts help us keep connected to that every day. So yeah, that's some things that immediately spring to mind.
So if I were to go to a TravelPerk kitchen, what would my mug say?
It says, "I like my meetings with no mute button."
That can be dangerous.
Yeah.
I'm now
So,
curious about what the meeting rooms are called as well.
well, this is the thing, that they're all like kind of inside jokes, so they mean nothing to anyone, you know, that would be coming in for them. But it's, you know, we recently took 2 new floors in our HQ here, in our current HQ, and you know, we offered up prizes to the best names for our community for naming the meeting rooms. And so, and again, building with our community, it gave everyone the opportunity to have a piece of, you know, an involvement in that. So yes, it was, and you know, it was all just part of I suppose what makes us, and that's something that we've done in all our previous offices. So it's just something that's continued, and we've maintained that. So
That's
yeah.
that's really cool to hear. The employees must love that type of engagement. Do you, as part of your team, do you measure retention? Is that a metric that you look at when you're thinking about culture and the experience in the community?
We certainly work closely with our people team to understand that, and you know, it's particularly on the tech side of the business. It's such a super competitive field to be working in, and you know, we're in hyper growth, and you know, it seems like, you know, every other tech company is in hyper growth at the moment, which is exciting times, right, for us. And but you know, it's certainly a challenge. You know, it's not something we, you know, we feel responsible for it, but we know we don't have a direct sort of like metric, or you know, or target for that. But you know, it's certainly something we feel personally kind of responsible for in the business, for sure.
Yeah, because the workplace is like such a huge touch point of that employee journey from when they start, right? It's
Yeah.
you know, it's yeah, super important.
With community kind of being the core driver for your workplace strategy, what kind of advice would you give? Maybe this can be our last kind of question to round down on, but what kind of advice would you give other workplace teams embarking on this kind of a journey? Maybe they have an HQ project coming up, or they're rethinking their office space. How do they get started?
That's a great question. For me, I'd review the values of the business as a starting point, and I think we need to make sure that we are living and breathing those every day. And if we're not, then that's the first question we need to start asking. And so, you know, we talk a lot about in TravelPerk, and we have a culture of going direct, and that's a top-down approach. So I can go, if I have something to talk to the CEO about, then I can go and knock on his door and go and speak to him, if he let me in. But you know, so you know, I think we should be addressing the culture is the foundation of what we build upon. So if we are, and in terms of building the community, you know, there's no point in dictating that. That has to be an involvement from everyone. And again, it also has to be involved from the top down. So I would go through a process of understanding what the needs are of the business. Find the, you know, our COO Hugh talks about finding the biggest problem within your respective field, your respective business, and going straight for that, you know, and trying to tackle the big problems. So, you know, if from a workplace point of view, if you're trying to start building a community or thinking about it, then go and speak to the people, find out what are the big issues, and I'm sure you'll get a lot of stuff that's kind of impactful but not critical, and then you'll find what the kind of core issues are relatively quickly by speaking to your key stakeholders, to the individual contributors throughout the business, and listening, I think, is the best way. And then you know, I would get that feedback up as high as you can through the business, so you can start making meaningful change, because you know, you can always add some nice, you know, kind of fluffy perks, and maybe put some fruit baskets around the office to try and drive community, or do a social event once a month to try and bring people in. But actually, you know, it's much more meaningful than that. It goes much deeper than that, and you know, understanding really what people are trying to achieve from their office, and then say listening to them, understanding that, and trying to deliver on that and where you can. That would be my suggestion.
Thank you. I think that's been incredibly grounding of a perspective to bring it back to what actually matters. It's not about a physical space. It's not about a bunch of policies. It's about creating a community and workspace as one of your tools, right? And to reflect that back and kind of communicate what your values are and what you're living and breathing every day. Really appreciate your perspective, Rob and Darren as well. And thank you everyone for joining us today. If you would like to reach out to any of us, then I am going to put our LinkedIn links into the chat. You should see that in your Zoom chat. And if you're interested in learning more about any of us, please feel free to reach out. Also, if you like this webinar, we've got more events coming up. So definitely check out the Density website for our future events. And it was great spending your lunch hour with us. Have a good rest of the day, everybody.
Thanks for having me, guys. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.